feeling like I'm Akademiks.
Cardi B. Oh, shit. Cardi B, Pusha T, top 5. All right, we got 3 topics. All right, cool. So here we are, and we're back in court yet again. Okay, this is trial week 3, and today is day 16. Now, just to give you guys the pretty much breakdown of what's left, this is pretty much one of the last victims we're going to hear. And we're probably then, just like Matthew Russell said, we're going to hear these other people who are going to, whether it may be a psychologist or whether it might be somebody who booked some flights or somebody, ancillary people that, were integral to the business, how the money was flowing, how people were moving around, how it was being facilitated or the cover-ups was being facilitated, even if they had knowledge or not. And there's still some big questions remain to be asked. Where are the bodyguards? Where is D-Rock? Where is Uncle Paulie? Where is, by the way, Uncle Paulie's alive, right? I don't know why he sounds old. No disrespect. Where is Roger Bonds? Roger Bonds, D-Rock, Uncle Paulie. Where are those 3? And then, of course, where's KK? KK clearly is somewhere in the winds because she does have an attorney. Will she testify on behalf and for the government? And what would that cooperation deal look like? I would imagine they got to be threatening her with like, yo, listen. Again, brings back Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell didn't really rat out Jeffrey Epstein. And what happened even after Jeffrey Epstein passed away, they fucking charged her and said, you got to go to jail too. So again, I'm pretty sure KK is probably doing a cost analysis here. She loves Diddy. Don't know if that's romantically or just loyal as an employee, but it looks like she's not trying to sink her former partner or boss or whatever. And she's also probably thinking about the liability that she has, even though she probably could get immunity. And I think she's kind of weighing it to say, yo, if Diddy's cooked and I try to hold it down, I'm going to jail too. That's the thing they got to think about, right? Like, some of these people might be like, Diddy, like, we fuck with you. It's not like we want to turn on you, but nigga, you're cooked, right? So if you're cooked, at some point, you got to be save yourself type mode. So we'll see how that happens, all right? So before the jury came in today, the judge says, what about the witness conflicts with other romantic partners, okay? They said the last one was with a colleague, not a girlfriend, okay? Interesting. So basically they're talking about the impending testimony of this Jane Doe that we don't know who it is. Shapiro says this is impeachment material, okay? Once again, the defense could bring in material that they feel shows that a prior testimony was lies. So if you said, no, I was crying all day after he beat my ass, next day they see you turning up on a yacht, they think they could, even if they find the video overnight, it's valid for them to introduce it as impeachment material because it directly goes against what you just said on the stand. So, you would have to imagine Shapiro or somebody in Diddy's team, probably the paralegals and investigators, when someone says something, that night they're staying up all night. Maybe they have a deadline at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. where they're going to turn everything over to the attorneys, but their research team is trying to, let's prove that this person's lying or not telling the truth, okay? Cool. The judge says, there are assaults on the Rule 608B. Is that fair? Shapiro says, no, it's not 608B. We're happy to provide the proffer ex parte. It's difficult to explain the fact. Judge says ex parte proffer is irregular, okay? Okay. Alexander Shapiro says, we want to put in an album art from Miss Ventura's Love a Loser video. It shows she's engaged in business independent of Combs. You're gonna ask, why do you need those photos? Judge says, I was going to ask that. Shapiro says, AUSAs have done it too. Judge says, I don't see the probative value of these defense exhibits. The defense is free to question the witness about them. What about drugs? You could ask that. Shapiro says, but it shows the witness taking drugs. And Mr. Combs didn't like it. AUSA says it's inadmissible. So apparently they had a video or they had some type of exhibit or a picture that showed Cassie taking drugs with somebody, right? With another witness. And they want to ask, yo, if y'all claim Diddy was drugging y'all, how the hell are y'all taking drugs out of his presence? And why is he scolding you for taking drugs out of his presence? Now, AUSA is probably, or the prosecution is, they felt like they addressed that before. They felt that, according to them, Cassie got a drug habit because of Diddy. And if Cassie took drugs outside of her or outside of him, it wasn't about him being there. It was about him instructing her to do it. For example, remember they would pop pills? They were like, oh, I'm about to get on the plane. You pop your pill, I'm about to pop my pill, or whatever they're doing. So it was okay for these people to take drugs outside of the presence of Diddy, only if he instructed. So it goes to the sex trafficking thing of, you have somebody and controlling their actions and even sexual actions by fraud, force, or coercion. Okay. All right, good. Let's keep it going. So the judge said the defense has to Monday to respond, and I guess they're talking about the judge says Mr. Combs says it's whack or whack. It goes to a state of mind. It's admissible. Anything more? Cool. There's a Dr. Hughes letter. The defense has Monday to respond to the second testimony about coercive control, given what the Second Circuit said in U.S. versus Larry. AUSA says yes under that recent decision. So it looked like they're going to be challenging. Remember, Dr. Hughes went up on a stand and testified towards how a victim would stay in a relationship with someone who they supposedly were getting abused by and not leave, even though seemingly given the opportunity to leave multiple times. So we'll get to that. The AUSA says we're working on different instructions before the testimony of Jane, okay? On the pseudonym issue, judge says just hand it up. If you agree, I will read it. Does witness Briana Bongolan need a Fifth Amendment immunity order? They're saying yes. So now we have this person, Briana Bongolan. We're going to Google who that person is. Briana Bongolan. Who is that? Am I saying their name right? Okay, so look like that's a forensic video expert. Okay, that's a forensic video expert. Cool. Why would they need a Fifth Amendment? Oh, no. Never mind. That's the accuser who said Diddy dangled her off a balcony. Never mind. So I guess she's going to testify today. So she's going to testify and also forensic expert. We'll get to it. Okay, the judge says, I'll ask our courtroom deputy to check on our jury. The jury enters first. We wish to enter some exhibits into evidence before the jury. A search of second or two-star island by HSI found this cell phone, okay? The exhibits are excerpts of this data, all right? AUSA says the data shows Twitter exhibits, text to D-Rock, who says, we in the security room. The owner says, what does Shorty say? D-Rock says, Cass is calling studios looking for you. Owner says, what did she say on the other thing? Act like I'm not fucking with her. D-Rock says, okay. AUSA says, how is her eye? D-Rock says, I told everyone a fight broke out in the club. She ain't tripping. She ain't tell nobody. I'm about to call you. Judge says, thank you. The government may call this next witness. So it looked like they clearly just, it's kind of odd because who's on the stand when they do that? Look like they just show a exhibit. So they enter it into evidence, but the jury's there. Usually, other than opening and closing statements, you usually ask questions, not testify, because it's considered testifying if you're talking to the jury, you know what I mean, as a defense or a prosecutor. But it looked like they were just introducing evidence, okay? All right, okay. So they probably Matthew Russell probably typed this up. He probably typed this up instead of. Yeah, that's confusing. All right, we'll hear what really will happen when they come out of court. Okay, cool. AUSA, so they call Mr. Piazza, okay, as an expert, right? And they have asked this guy, they said, yo, where do you work? He says legal, audio, and video. And this is his website. It says, have you testified before? He says, yes, in mostly criminal matters. I've done also some civil and depositions. AUSA says, have you been qualified as an expert? Piazza says over 50 times. AUSA says we move to qualify him as an expert. The defense has no objections. The judge says he's an expert, okay? So now what that means in a trial setting is that he could speak to certain things that other people can't speak to. For example, if he says, based on my research and my background, that video was altered, that could be considered as evidence by the jury, as opposed to, say, Cassie testified and said, I think it was a fake video. That's going to be objected to because she's not an expert. You can't testify as an expert to shit you're not an expert for. So he could testify as an expert to the veracity of videos or cell phone videos or surveillance videos that was extracted from Diddy's phone. Okay, cool. So AUSA said, let me show you something. This is a video of a towel Combs kicking Cassie on the ground. That's the March 2016 footage. AUSA says, what's the frame rate? He said, what's the frame rate? So they're asking him fundamental foundational questions to make sure, and oftentimes why this happens, you need to school the jury on what the fuck is going on and give them a crash course that the expert's testimony can make sense. So frame rate is frame per second. It can cause a video to have more info per second. The Piazza says this is a cell phone video, a video of a video. It was shot on a iPhone 6. It's 30 frames a second. It wasn't edited or tampered with, I found. AUSA says, how did you reach that conclusion? Says, yes, they're accurate. It said in the surveillance videos, it says there were some issues with that. Piazza says the clock was set to play 30 frames a second, but this was 22 frames. It played faster. So we had to account for that. AUSA says how? We counted the frames and used software to correct the timing. AUSA says, were the surveillance videos altered? He says no. So he says basically the recording of the video was not up to par. It wasn't 30 seconds per frame. Usually that's the standard. Even the cell phone records at least 30 frames per second. And he's saying that on the surveillance video, it wasn't. And the prosecutor is saying, did he tamper with the surveillance video? And he says, no, we didn't find any tampering. Cool. He says, here the video stream was corrupted. It's caused a distortion. AUSA says the whole file or maybe some small pieces. Piazza says the corruption exists in the video stream. There's a structure called a GOP, a group of pictures. We have predictive frames. Okay, I gotta make sure you guys can see what I'm. All right, cool. Piazza says you don't know this, but a static camera does not re-record a wall that doesn't move each second. It is repeated. Only what move is recorded. Thank you. AUSA says play 55 seconds. The video shows Combs throwing Cassie to the ground and kicks her. He said, did you see pixelation? Piazza says yes. He says, does that represent manipulation? He says no. He says you can choose motion activity. The camera only turns on when there's motion, but it causes timestamp issues. Go back frame by frame. I want to point something out. So the guy's just kind of breaking down this video of Cassie getting assaulted. And he's really, the government has him up there to prove that if Diddy's defense was ever going to be, this is a fake ass video, this is AI, niggas edited it. Remember, that's one of the things that Diddy's team was saying. Y'all niggas edited the fuck out of that video. Y'all cut a piece out. Y'all made it look worse than it is, even though it's pretty bad. But it was saying you cut some shit out that kind of didn't show the full altercation. That just made it look like Diddy was wilding on her the whole time, right? Piazza says there seems to be a collision of two issues, okay? Now, what this guy's testifying, what I think the prosecutor's trying to extract in terms of information, is that the government didn't actually alter the video, is that the security camera only captures motion detected video, which means when there's no motion, that shit is not in the video. So the missing timestamps is because there was no motion. Okay? That's what he's giving this knowledge on. Okay, cool. So he says, this seems to be a collision between two issues. Look at the male sitting down. There appears to be a ghost of a person. The motion activity begins to sense that we have motion. Now there's full figure in that frame. The file is corrupted. It said, did you make a compilation? Piazza says, yes. Our office requested it. They are edited to track the movement of the individual inside the events. He says, does it have a different camera angles in it? Piazza says, yes. He said, how did you show the changes? He said, a black screen. AUSA says, is this a compilation? Piazza says, yes. AUSA says, play the first 30 seconds. What is happening? Piazza says, the male is running down the hallway, and he now throws her down. Give me a second. Oh, shit, my bad. Chat, I'm a little discombobulated today because I got to open the chat on this other computer, which is like right here. This is usually my prep computer. I see some people arriving in here late. They said, explain what happened yesterday, man. I did give an explanation of what happened yesterday. You got to tune in immediately when the stream starts. I already told you guys what happened. Just rewind the stream. You'll get it. It's at the top of the stream. Okay? I don't want to keep going back on it to derail what we're doing. Okay. Just give me a second. I just got to get the chat up. Okay. I'm reading from King Akademiks chat today. All right? By the way, thank you guys for the 5 new membership. All right? Perfect. So it says this is a compilation. Yes. To play the first 30 seconds. All right, cool. He says the male's run down the hallway. He throws her down. Now he drags her. It's on the screen. The AUSA says, what did the man just do? He says he's dragging a woman. He's holding the bag. Dragging a woman holding the bag. AUSA says, what is he holding? It appears to be a cell phone. It looks like it's glowing. Let's focus on what happened in the mirror. Play back. What happened? And Piazza says the male picked up a small object, which appears to be a vase, and threw it across the room at the woman. AUSA says, continue playing. Who's emerging now? Piazza says, that's the female with the duffel, her luggage. Now who? Now there's a security person. AUSA says, now the man, Combs, is walking away. What is he holding? He's holding a cell phone. He puts it to his ear. Do you find these things accurate? He says, yes. And this was all the footage that I had. AUSA says, let's turn to the sex videos. Oh, shit. God damn it. So now they're trying to validate. So they're going to bring this video guy to validate that all the videos are not AI and they're actually what they actually are. Okay. So let's turn to the sex videos, PX 201 and 210. Let me clarify. These are under seal. These were recovered from the Frank Black user on a device provided to the U.S. by Miss Ventura. AUSA says these are enhanced versions of original videos created in 2012 and 2014. So it looked like they enhanced the videos, but these are sex videos that, Cassie kept of supposed freak-offs. I'm imagining they're not showing this in the gallery. Only Cassie, well, not Cassie, only the expert, maybe the defense team and the jury could see them, all right? Mr. Piazza, what were you asked to do with the sexually explicit videos? I was asked to enhance the audio component. We admitted these videos into evidence, and no further question. The judge actually breaks, and then they're back. Tenny Garagos actually says, what's your understanding of the source of these surveillance videos? Piazza says, they came from the native system. Tenny says, how did they come to your possession? Piazza says, well, they were exported and transcoded. Garagos then says, who gave the surveillance videos to you? Said the U.S. Attorney Office. He says, who gave it to them? Says, I don't know. Says, did you say it was from a cheap system? Piazza says, I don't think I said that. Says, let me show you your notes. Check out your notes. Sean G. style, huh? Hear what you said. Yo, my nigga kept doing the, let me refer you to your notes. Chad, I gotta get my little notepad back popping, man. Okay. Garagos says, let me show you your notes. AUSA says, this is only for the witness, okay? The judge says, yes. Garagos says, so you did call it cheap, right? Piazza says, I don't know when this document was created. Garagos says, but you did think the system was cheap, right? Piazza says, yeah, in a way. Garagos says, let me play you 10C 103, okay? Garagos says, there are minutes not shown. Piazza says, this is my corrected version, but there are a few issues that we can't correct. The system is buffering some of the time, and some of the portions were motion activated. Garagos says, let's play again the male coming into the elevator bank at 11:02. And then the timestamps are jumping around. Now, by the way, I'm going to be honest with you, chat, and this is why this person being on the stand is really short. That video is so damning. It's no way you could be sane to say, oh that was fake video. You'd be an idiot, right? Like, that would be losing the case. So I think they're just kind of, trying to poke a few holes, and maybe this is, maybe all the videos aren't as bad as they seem, but they're not going to say this thing didn't happen. I mean, they've copped the biggest plea already to say, yo, you're going to see some things. And Tenny Garagos said it at the beginning of the trial when she did the opening. She said, you're going to see some things about Diddy. And yo, he was violent. And that was not them throwing the case. That was them saying, we're not denying that he put hands on some of these hoes. Like he probably did that, but that's not why he's being charged. We got to think about why he's being charged. Okay. So it says the timestamps are jumping around. On the video, Cassie being kicked on the ground. Piazza says it's a constant playing catch-up. Garagos says, play ahead. We're at 11:11:28. So this is in the morning that day. Garagos says the female picks up a house phone. There's some sort of cutout. Can you explain? Piazza says, could you back up and go frame by frame? Garagos says, sure. But is the male separated from her? Piazza says the bag drop triggered it. Garagos says it's a 10-second difference. So they're trying to act like there's more things in between the constant beating. There's a programming note. Say, even I lost track of the thread for some time, kept reverting on the ground. Now resuming, but this needs to be fixed. So let's watch it again. Did we just jump about 10 seconds on the timestamp? It says yes. He said there's a 5-second offset between the two cameras. That's what you just showed, right? Garagos says, okay. The female picks up the phone And the male walks away and start again. Is this him walking away? By the way, you should also know Diddy's team won't refer to Combs being in the video. They're not going to deny it, but they're not going to admit it. So they're not going to say, does it show Combs walking away? They'll just say, does it show a man or a male? Again, it's one of those things that you don't admit, even if it's obvious, you don't admit even on a subliminal level that in guilt of any sort. So yes, Gargo says play more. Okay, so they keep going through this. Do you see this translucent or ghost-like figure in the cell phone video in the surveillance video? It says that cell phone video was not high quality enough to capture it. It says, but it's not there. Piazza says it's not. Gargo says, Mr. Piazza, thank you so much for coming. We have no further questions. Judge asks Smizer if they want to do a redirect. Smizer says, okay. Piazza. So they're 5 minutes off? That's what he's saying about these videos? Piazza says, my notes told me there was about 5 minute and 55-second difference, and then there was another offset by 5 seconds. AOC it says, do these videos reliably and accurately depict what happened? Piazza says yes. Judge says you may go. And they said before a next witness, sidebar, sidebar, sidebar. Okay, so they take a sidebar. Take a sidebar. And was there a jump in? Huh. Okay. So they took a sidebar. They're back just now. AUSA says, we're going to call Briana Bongolan. Now, this is the one that Diddy supposedly hung off the balcony. Okay? Wale, you could finally breathe easy. They've been quizzing Wale about being hung off the balcony for the longest, chat. And again, you know I often try to refer to other things, but only while we're waiting for tweets. Wale denies being dangled off the balcony. Did y'all see this?
Brought up and something with the Diddy situation.
Why are you asking me about that stuff?
I was going to say, to clear it up, you weren't involved in it.
I never got in an altercation with that man.
Yeah.
I've never been in an altercation with nobody in the industry.
Yeah.
I've had close calls, but not him. Definitely. Like that, it was made up by somebody who was just trolling and it just went.
Yeah, I know you are, because when they throw people's names in it, when you have nothing to do with it, I know that's like.
It's a topic to go. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Like no.
Your name was brought up in something with the Diddy situation.
Okay, so he didn't want to talk about it. Then I think he was asked about it another time. This is how the story went, right?
I know, like, the poppin' people, Wale been telling us, like, before we even get to the studio with him and Cassie in the studio, Wale was already telling us, like, man, we better go to the studio with Cassie. Man, Diddy be acting crazy over her. Diddy don't want nobody working around her.
Let me go I'm grabbing my second coffee, too.
Her too wild or make her feel uncomfortable. Or if you see her security guards with her, just prepping us on how crazy Diddy act over her. Like, any guys that's around her in her vicinity, while Diddy not around, he kirks off, he goes off. We make it through the session. We probably like an hour in the session, like an hour into the session, maybe two. Her and Wale doing what they do in the studio, but they helping each other. It's just professional, y'all. It ain't nothing like, they ain't doing nothing weird. I don't feel no weird vibes. I don't see no flirting or nothing. It's really professional. They making good music. So I'm off, not paying no attention. I've been heard what he told me before we walk in here about Diddy be tripping, but I'm just thinking like Diddy be tripping. I swear to God, y'all, Diddy and his security guards walk through this room. I told y'all. But I don't know. I guess they wasn't supposed to be there doing it in person together. They were supposed to send it or whatever, but they was trying to creep and do it in person together because they ain't thinking Diddy gonna pop up in here. Like, Diddy probably somewhere living his natural born life. At least that's what they thought. I swear, y'all, Diddy got, like, little secret people that follow her places. Like, when she go in little restaurants, like, his girlfriends, like, he keep eyes on to see who they cheating on. Like, he that crazy. It's some obsessive Diddy. Like, it's crazy. The world know about it, though. Like, the crazy parties. Diddy be crazy over them girls, like, super duper stalking. Like, he be having private investigators following him. No niggas can't go around him. He very controlling. I swear to God. So, that's what the vibe is. So, Diddy walks in. Diddy walk in, Wale and him in the bathroom. Wale and the girl in the booth, but they doing the music part, me and Sha over here. I don't know it's Diddy who walked in. I just see these big security guys and a nigga in black, like it's a black sweatsuit. in a hat. I can't really see who it is, but I know it's another celebrity important person because this room only important people walking in this room. This ain't even no type of room you can get in unless you're an important person. But he came in with aggression. They moving. But I seen security guards with him, so I know it wasn't nothing.
Now, so we're now finding out there's another person. But here's the thing. That there's another person that was hung off the balcony. Briana Bongolan, who's taking I'm fucking up her name. That's taking a stand now. Here's the thing. You got to remember, this is back in the 90s. Or not really the 90s, but like, Diddy's a nigga from the 90s. So like, it sounds crazy when we hear it like dangling off the balcony, but it probably doesn't sound that crazy when you kind of hear like that was like an intimidation thing for them niggas in the 90s. Didn't they dangle, what's the guy named Vanilla Ice off the balcony? Didn't Suge Knight do that?
For us, like it was no threat to us or me or Shy. It was like control because they had to get in, they had to go through all this, so you know it's somebody.
By the way, don't worry, King Akademiks channel. I'm gonna tweet out our stream today.
Number one.
Hold on, and I'm gonna use that link. So I'll get y'all guys a couple more people up in there.
And then I looked, it was like a glance once he got a little bit past me. I'm like, damn, that's Diddy. I ain't say nothing. I looked at Shy. Shy looked at me. I was not about to run in there. First of all, I'm here with Shy. I was not about to run in there and say Wale and be like, Wale, Diddy come. Like, that was out of, I would have died. Like, that's out of my control. First of all, this Puff Daddy, I promise you, I don't know what gangsta I do in the street. Uncle Buck, this is off my list. This is off my radar right here. I can't do nothing with this. I'm gonna stand down. So, man, Shy like, oh. So as they go in there, they go back there, but they shut the door. It's a blind. All right, it's a studio part, the booth part. It's like a blind back there. Like it's a pop art. They do orchestra back there. So with a booth at, it's like an orchestra, like a church joint. You can open it and you can see in the studio where they record, or you can shut it. Like don't y'all ever been to a graduation and the blind shut? You can shut the blinds and you can't even see back there. Diddy and them went back there and shut the blinds. All I heard was a rock, but not punches, like shit, like moving around, tables and shit. But I'm like, oh, so me and Shy run to the blinds. We peeping through the blinds. I'm peeping through the blinds. Shy peeping through the blinds. I swear for God, it's a balcony in the studio, like an out balcony. You can see over the back. I swear to God, my grandmother, they got Wale over top of his feet. They got him off his feet, hanging off the balcony. Like, he hanging off the balcony. They dangling by his feet. I can't really hear what they saying. I'm like, Shy, man, be quiet. Shy don't know what's going on. First of all, Shy go back and help Wale. This is man. He can go back to Shy and he must move. I swear to God. Shy like, man, what they doing? I said, man, they got him over the balcony by his feet. They're like, man, no, he don't. That ain't him. Like, so that is him. We knew it was him because we know what type of shoes Wale wore to the studio, and we seen them jump up in the air. So
Nigga was getting dangled over the balcony wearing some retro Jordans, man. That shit's crazy, huh? Okay. All right, okay. So now this woman is here. The government calls Briana Bongolan or Bongolan? Whatever. It says, what else are you called? She says, Banna. They said, what do you work in? They said, well, I work in the fashion industry. I'm a fashion designer. AUSA says, what did Mr. Combs do to you? He held me over a 17-story balcony. AUSA says, and any after effects? He says, well, I had night terrors. I wake up in my sleep. He said, who's this? He says, yeah, that's Cassie. Cassie was my friend. I met her in 2013 at Young and Reckless, the streetwear company. Then at Diamond Designs. AUSA says, how would you describe Cassie's relationship with Mr. Combs? Bongolan says, volatile. I didn't want to meet him right away. I had seen a black eye. She begged me to meet him. AUSA says, did you design and work for Combs? Yeah, I did a little bit. AUSA says, where did Combs live? I think he lived in Beverly Hills. And now we got Nicole Westmoreland, who's actually doing this cross. So let me see if I can look up this woman. I just want to see if she looks like Briana Bongolan. Is it Banna the Goat? Yeah, I think this is her. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is her. She got pictures of Cassie. This is her. Where is her? I guess this would be her. Is this her? I don't know. This is her? I don't know. It says Banna right here. I don't know if she's one of these ladies. I can't tell. She might be. If this is her, she might be lesbian. She got a ring next to the thing, and with this person, it says engaged to Ban of the Goat. Damn, she got a baddie, huh? Nah, never mind. My boy Dr. Umar said we can't indulge right now, man. Yeah, we can't accredit this. Yo, is this premium milk or what? Chat. Is this premium milk, soy milk, whole milk, 2% or 1%? Y'all gotta let me know. All right. Like, anyway, not that this matters. But if you want to know who this person is that's making, I guess, these allegations, looks like this is them. All right. But they're a stylist or something. Okay. Or fashion designer. All right. By the way, interestingly enough, they bring up Westmoreland. I'm trying to, the reason why I looked her up, I knew she wasn't black, but I'm trying to see where and why they're using, this whole team. You got to remember, there's a lot of people on Diddy's defense team. So trying to figure out who is being used for what is, maybe we could get their game plan understood a little bit more. So Nicole Westmoreland, she says objection, speculation. Now, obviously, she's objecting here. She's not cross-examining, and we've only seen her cross-examine a black woman so far. But she might be the person who's going to be cross-examining this witness as well. It says, judge says, ask another question. AUSA says, do you know the name of the street? It says Mapleton, 200 South Mapleton. AUSA says, what did you do with Cassie? Well, I did a bunch of drugs. We'd go shopping. We'd hang out with Deontay. Deontay was the guy. By the way, if you don't realize what's happening, they're connecting the dots. Deontay was one of the assistants that got immunity and also testified. We'd hang out with Deontay and others. It says, is this a photo of you and Cassie shopping? Bongolan says, yes, in April 2016. By the way, that's about 2 or 3 months, actually a month after Diddy supposedly did that to Cassie in that hotel. Puffs texted Cassie and asked where she was. He sent a list, where had we been? AUSA says, had you or Cassie told Mr. Combs where you were? Bongolan says, no. AUSA says, how did it make you feel? Combs says, objection. Judge says, overrule. Bongolan says, oh my God, he knows where we've been. Where would you sleep at Cassie's? I would sleep on the couch or the balcony. Huh? She would sleep on the balcony. What the fuck? So look like in 2016, April, Puff hit up Cassie, asked where she was, and sent a list where we've been. So look like Diddy would ask, yo, where the fuck have you been? And you got to tell him where you've been. Had you or Cassie told Mr. Combs where you were? No. How did it make you feel? Okay. Then they say she was scared because Diddy knew where she was. Okay. Said, did Mr. Combs come over? Says, yes. He banged on the door. He came in. He said, do you know how? I said, I don't know how. He was upset. He threw a knife in her direction, and she threw it back. Ooh, okay. That's interesting. It's the first time we hear a witness actually say that there was some sort of retaliation, even though it's still being understood that this was initiated by Winning Ways says, Pornhub sent me like a whole thing. I got Pornhub socks. The boxers had to cut it there. I couldn't wear no Pornhub boxes. Like, come on, man. It's like they're trying to put me in the back of the fan bus or whatever the fuck they're going on. You know, the little bang bus shit. But yeah, ever since I got introduced to Baddie Hub, I'm off Pornhub right now. Like right now, it's a Baddie Hub thing. It's a Baddie Hub thing. I ain't gonna cap with you. Anyway, back to the stuff. It's one of my favorite sweaters, though. Okay. He banged on the door, came in. Do you know how? Okay, he was upset. He threw a knife in her direction. She threw it back. Wow, they're kind of violent with each other. Obviously, Diddy initiated this first, so who cares, right? Okay, so were they doing drugs, or were you doing drugs? He said, I don't remember. It looked like she was strung out, too. Looked like she was a drug partner of Cassie, right? Did you call the police? No. Why not? I was scared. Did you see injuries on Cassie? Yes, she showed me on FaceTime before the makeup for the perfect match. What did she say? She was quiet. Yeah, again, they're taking this 360 approach of all corroborating the same story. And I think the story, we clearly know there was violence, but there is this they're almost hinting towards it's more than violence. We're all scared. We couldn't do anything. We felt we couldn't move. We felt we couldn't leave. We felt we couldn't even call for help. We were just scared, right? Wow. Wow. Okay. By the way, you know what I saw today? Okay. We'll leave that there. We're gonna come back to this. We're gonna come back to that interview consistently. I'm not gonna lie. All right. Somebody said Pornhub they're not a sponsor of today. Y'all are funny. Okay, good. So we're gonna call her Banna because I'm gonna fuck up this name every time. So Banna says she's seen the injuries on FaceTime. She said, what did she say? She was quiet. Banna says, we were at a party at Blind Dragon, a karaoke bar in West Hollywood. Then we went to Cassie's house to help her pack. Deontay was there. Puff came. Says, are you under subpoena right now? Banna says, yes. I won't get in trouble if I'm truthful. So she's telling why she's there. She's got subpoenaed. And that's why I'm in agreement with what Taco Pina says. These aren't people that are co-conspirators. They're just witnesses. They got subpoenaed. And were they like smoking crack? Not saying Cassie smoked crack. They might have smoked crack back in the day with Cassie. So yeah, if I got to admit to smoking crack, give me some motherfucking immunity. But we're still looking for the real co-conspirators, right? Or I think the argument for a defense attorney to make is, how come y'all didn't charge the co-conspirators, but it still remains to be seen. They could flip on Diddy at the end. That's why I keep saying D-Rock. Because if you're asking me who the co-conspirators would be, D-Rock, Uncle Paulie, KK. Those should be people also in cuffs sitting there watching what's going on. D-Rock would hit up witnesses for Diddy, right? KK would handle a lot of bidding. That's an organization, and that makes the RICO real. But a few assistants cleaning up baby oil is that's, you know what I mean? Anyway. Okay, it says, did Mr. Combs provide you with drugs? Banna says, yes, one was called G. I'm not an avid user. And then it was ketamine. Marijuana, coke. It says, how much did you get drugs for, or how often did you get drugs for Cassie? It says, pretty often, man. Them damn oxy pills, okay? Did she pay you? It says, yes, she paid me. Anyway, it says, did you ever get drugs for Mr. Combs? It says, yes, once. I got him some cocaine. AUSA says, did you sell drugs to others? She says, yes. I ain't gonna lie. She do kind of look like a type of woman who probably got the ill plug, huh? But she do look like she got the ill drug plug, right? Yeah, she look like she got some drugs right here. She even hold the purse like it's some drugs in there or whatever this is. AUSA says, did you sell drugs to others? Banna says, yes. AUSA says, did you try with Cassie to stop drugs? She says, yes, we tried to cook, but there were a lot of drugs around. AUSA says, has Mr. Combs ever threatened you? Banna says, yes. AUSA says, let me show you a photo from April 2016. Who's in it? Says, there's a photographer. Can I not speak? There's a photographer. No, photographer. No, my bad. Yeah, photographer. Jesus Christ. That's when my Jamaican accent starts fucking up with my American English accent, and I start fucking up pronunciations of words. Anyway, who goes by the name of Bad Boy with an I. We thought it was cool that was his name. We thought we made some art. Banna says, yo, Puff came up to my face and says, I am the devil, and I could kill you. She starts to cry. On the stand, that is. So Banna's crying on the stand. AUSA says, were you taking drugs that day? She says, yeah, probably some cocaine. AUSA says, did you continue to see Mr. Combs after that? She says, yes. This is why. She says she doesn't know. That's also another thing, chat. We're hearing a lot of these victims, and AUSA is doing this, the prosecutor is doing this as a tactic. They're jumping ahead of Brian Steele or somebody else cross-examining the witness and be like, well, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you leave? And they kind of get it out in a very palatable way on direct by that person saying, I really don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know why I would leave. I didn't know why I would leave. Somebody said, you so smart and dumb. What you mean Chat, I just told you it's like an accent mix-up. Chill. That happens a lot. Anytime I switch from the Jamaican language or dialect is called patois. When I speak patois straight, I'm good. When I jump in between, I start fucking up on words. Go watch the Vibes Cartel interview because I'm doing that. And I'm fucking up on words when I'm trying to go seamlessly. But if I speak one, I'm fine. Ain't nobody bilingual in here? If you speak straight Spanish, you're good. If you're trying to do Spanish and English and you're going in between, you know? And I was listening to mad Jamaican music before we started. Man, come on, let's get back to this shit. Anyway, just keep reading the shirt. All right. Okay, so she says she doesn't know why she hung out with him afterwards. AUSA says, did you tell the government about this threat in your first meeting? So now they're also jumping ahead of another common strategy by the defense. Why are you saying stuff now you didn't tell the government when you first met with them? That's been a big thing. And Banner says, no, I didn't tell the government about him threatening me when I first met with him. I said, why not? Westmoreland said objection. They sustain it. And they said they're breaking there. Okay. That might be a break. Okay. The judge break. Okay, cool. Now, here we go. All right. Let's see if we can get some more tweets in here. People, how y'all feeling? Welcome to my people. We got to see if the Academy will continue to lead in the viewer count. They've been leading since last stream. Will they lead again in who have the most views? By the way, Douglas Butler, thank you for the 50. Says, appreciate the community and your content. Do you think Diddy has a chance? By the way, thank you for the $50, by the way. Big W to Douglas Butler. Everybody clap it up for him. Thank you, brother. Do you think Diddy has a chance of beating the case, or is he cooked in your opinion? Man, it's so, again, because we're hearing new information, and we're at the part that everybody 2 weeks ago was like, well, we know we beat girls, but we don't know about the RICO. And the RICO meaning the racketeering, the organizational aspect. They're trying to prove it. They're bringing out CFOs. They're bringing out other people that would seemingly be involved in the organization, whether they had knowledge of it being a criminal organization or not. And that's how they're trying to prove it. I'm going to be honest with you. I think there's some reasonable doubt for the RICO. I can't see him beating all charges currently, especially the prostitution charges. The RICO is a bigger charge, though. What I will say is that I don't think he's going to beat, well, currently, I can't say he's going to beat all the charges, but it changes day by day, bro. I'm going to be honest with you. It changes day by day. But even more than that, we're not in court, so we don't see how the juror and how shit is really hitting. Like, there's a bunch of, remember when we started the trial day 1? We're at day 16. There were a bunch of drop mic moments, and even reading it, we could tell, damn, that's how you walk up. You'd be like, no more questions, right? We really don't know. We're hearing a bunch of crying. Even Banner is on the stand and starts sobbing, start doing all of this. We don't know if, like, in court, everybody's kind of like, yo, wow. We don't know how they're feeling. You guys are getting information through some tweets, some few eyewitnesses that might be biased, and then you're getting through me. So we really don't know. But do I think he has a chance of beating it? Yes, he has a chance of beating it. Do I think he's beating it right now? I would be. I can't really say that at the current moment, right? Did they break for lunch? They must have broke for lunch, right? Should be back. Let's get right to it. Okay. So they're back 33 minutes ago. It says, anything before we bring the jury back in? AUSA says, no disputes finally. He says, but now we think that Jane will not get on the stand today, given how this is going. I think we're going to get Enrique Santos on today. Some exhibits will be for Jane and some tech issues. So they're saying Jane Doe is going to come out tomorrow, which, wait. Yeah, today's Wednesday. Tomorrow, which would be Thursday. The judge says, okay. Jury comes out, then they're told to return to the jury room. The judge says, the jurors, we have some technical issue. We have to go under the tables, and we're going to have you retire to the jury room just for your comfort. We'll bring you back in a few minutes. The jury comes back. Smizer then says, what happened on the balcony? Bongolan says, I was there. USA says, now, who else was there? Says Cassie and my ex-girlfriend at the time. So she confirms what we thought. She is lesbian. AUSA says, what were you doing? I was sleeping on the couch with my ex. AUSA says, were you doing drugs? He says, I can't recall. AUSA says, what did you do when Combs arrived? He says, well, I took my ex-girlfriend to the bathroom. I went, shh. Why did you go, shh? That's what the government asks. Bongolan says, I want to expose her to what I saw. AUSA says, then I went out to the balcony and he was either lit a blunt or was about to. Mr. Combs came up behind me on the balcony. He lifted me up and put me on the railing. Could you show us how he held you? Bongolan says to myself, he says, show us. He says, damn, okay, how much did you weigh? He said, I can't tell because of the drugs, but maybe about 115 pounds. AUSA says, what did Mr. Combs scream is true? He yelled, you know what the fuck you did? I said back, I don't give a fuck. No. Oh, and I said back, I don't give a fuck what I did. AUSA says, how long did he hold you there? She says, how long it takes to say that multiple times, you know what the fuck you did. AUSA says, what happens next? He threw me on the balcony furniture and says, were you injured? Bongolan says, I didn't know at first. What did Cassie say? It says along the lines of, did you just hang her over the balcony? And then I heard, her girlfriend is in the house. What's wrong with you? I guess like Cassie's confronting him like, bro, what is wrong with you? Like, you know, me and you get crazy, but you're getting crazy in front of people. Bongolan says he left and I left, and I wanted to take a shower. I felt disgusted. I saw a huge bruise on my leg with a piercing in the middle and back of the neck pain. Says, is this photo a fair and accurate representation of your leg? She says, yes. Bongolan says, I called one of my managers and they said, if you're scared of anything else, just go to a chiropractor. He said, did you tell the chiropractor who had done this to you? He says, no. They asked, but I just paid and took the neck brace. AUSA says, is the neck brace in this photo of you? He says, yes. Did you ever talk to Mr. Combs about this? I said, I don't want no problems with you. He didn't say anything. AUSA says, is that the last time you saw them? Bongolan says, January 2nd, 2018. All right. I also have, I'm looking for it. Give me a second, chat. So I have access to some exhibits here. I'm going to look to see if any exhibits. So I get the transcripts now, a couple days after. But let me see if, okay, all right. We got some new exhibits. Okay. Or did I read these already? Might have looked at these already. Give me a second. Combs admitted. Yeah, we haven't gotten anything updated in here. Sorry. Okay, yeah. Nothing that is updated. That's a message from Deontay, all to Diddy. Nothing too updated. All right, good. So this is after the neck brace thing. It says, how do you remember? He says, I tattooed the date on myself. What? He said the last date she saw Diddy. He said, how did you remember that date? I tattooed the date. So why did you tattoo the date? It was the day I decided to get sober. It was a New Year's thing in Miami at the One Hotel. Puff, Cassie, and I did 8 hours of ketamine. So she's admitting after one bender with Diddy, she's like, yo, I got to get sober, man. Fuck this. She also tattoos that date on her. Says, are you aware that Cassie included the balcony incident in her complaint? Bongolan says, yes, I told her she had the facts wrong. It wasn't a hotel. And Tiffany, it says, it wasn't a hotel and Tiffany. Oh. So it wasn't Tiffany. I guess maybe Tiffany's is lesbian as well. So I guess Cassie wrote that thing to in her lawsuit. Cassie referred to her ex-girlfriend that she was sleeping with on the couch. She thought that was Tiffany, but Bongolan says no, we weren't in a hotel, and my ex-girlfriend wasn't Tiffany. Okay, cool. Have you talked with Cassie about your testimony or hers? They said no. I've had nightmare. I scream. When was the last time you had nightmares? Bongolan says, the other day. He says, have you hired a lawyer about the balcony incident? He says, yes, my first lawyer I hired in January 2024. He said, did you mention everything in your first meeting with us? She says, no. So, by the way, they're jumping ahead of what the defense is going to say. Like, you know, everybody has a lawyer. So it seems everybody has a lawyer who is testifying. And that's to kind of prevent the angle of you're only hiring a lawyer because you intend to sue and try to get some civil compensation, right? All good. All good. We're trying to get caught up here, people. Trying to get caught up. I wanted to get to the idea of, remember they showed those exhibits?
See on that video seems to be extremely high. So I personally do not agree with the strategy the defense seems to be employing here. Hanging out with Cassie, that he thought that they would do drugs together, and that at a certain stage in their relationship, looking around 2016 or so, that we've heard all sorts of indicators that Diddy was not happy about Cassie's drug use, and she testified that she did sometimes provide Cassie with drugs and Cassie would pay for it, including Oxycontin, cocaine, K, X, and an array of drugs. But there's some interesting stories that have come out already this morning that we had never heard before. One incident that Briana relayed is that she was at Cassie's house, which she said she was at frequently. She would frequently sleep there, either on the couch or on the balcony or in Cassie's room. And she said one time there was a pounding on the door, and that Diddy came in and he took a knife and threw it at Cassie. And he said, she thought it came close to Cassie, and the state asked Bono, how did Cassie respond? And she said she picked up the knife and threw it back at him. This is something we had never heard before, but obviously that is displaying certainly a reckless disregard, one would think, for basic safety. Second, the second story we heard about that we had never heard is Bono testified that she was she was on the beach with Cassie, and Diddy was there, and that he came up to her and spoke close to her in her face, and said that I am your devil and I can kill you. And she said that it freaked her out, it terrified her. But she was asked, why did you continue to hang out with Diddy after that? And she said, I don't know. Why did you continue to hang out with Cassie after that? I don't know. Now, her testimony seems like someone who is somewhat affected, in the sense that she talks softly, she talks like someone who has suffered through some trauma. I am not speculating. There's been no talk that trauma has come at the hands of the defendant or from other things in her life, so I'm certainly not speculating about that. But I just wanted to convey to you the feeling that she gives when she's testifying, that her voice sounds very soft. A lot of the questions seem borderline leading, if not really leading, in order to try to elicit her testimony. And her testimony began, the opening statement that she made when she was asked, state your name. Do you know Diddy? Yes. How do you know Diddy? He tried hanging me. He hanged me over the 17th floor of a balcony window. That's how her testimony started. Now, we had heard talk in opening statements that Diddy had dangled a woman off the balcony of a window, and there was some testimony from Cassie and a third party. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Deontay, but I'm not sure. I don't recall precisely about the Bono on the balcony with Diddy incident. But the Cassie wasn't there when it happened. No one seemed to have been there aside from Bono, so we're going to have to hear from her. And the question is how much credibility she's going to have. She admits to doing a lot of drugs. She admits that she was on cocaine when Diddy purportedly made that threat that he could kill her. So the question of her credibility is something that we certainly should foresee the defense is going to try and attack, because she seems as if she has done a lot of drugs. She's admitted that she's done a lot of drugs, and even on the stand, she seems very soft and almost a little bit lost. So it'll be interesting to see how the defense attacks, but one would expect that they're going to attack the reliability of her memory, given the volume of drugs that she's admitted to having consumed. That's what I've gotten to you so far. I'm really looking forward to seeing the balance of this direct. We'll hear more about the balcony incident and other...
Okay, we're back. We are back, people. All right, so they then ask, did your first lawyer send demand letters to Combs? It says multiple. The demand was high. He picked it. Said, did you approve the letter? And said, no, they were incorrect. I let him go. And said, who was your lawyer? Oh, wow. Tyrone Blackburn. This is also very damning. They're saying that, remember, this is also Lil Rod's lawyer. also Rule 11 sanctions, or at least the committee, whatever. Anyway, did people reach out to you? Tiffany, Cassie, the producer Rob Holiday. Was he friends with Mr. Combs? Yes. Mr. Westmoreland says, or actually, Mrs. Westmoreland says, let's have a sidebar. Judge says we may. They had a sidebar. Okay. Perfect. Remember, right? Who came to the show, gave me a gift bag. The gift bag had two things: Ciroc and baby oil. She said she wrote me a letter. Let me see. Oh, nah, she gave me the ultimate freak off pack. She said she wrote me I didn't read the letter yet. I didn't read the letter. I didn't read the letter yet. Okay? Shout out to my chat queens, man. I love y'all. But she also gave me condoms. This was the only confusing thing about the gift she gave me. There is no condoms in a freak off. The fuck? I understood the baby oil. I understood the Ciroc. The condoms just fucked me up. I'm like, they're not using no fucking condoms. They're fucking raw. Like, bearskin raw. I said, she trying to have a safe freak off. Like, hell nah. Nobody uses the condoms in the freak off. Condoms in the freak off is like blasphemous. I'm sorry. Beautiful and blessed TV. I love you too. Somebody says there's a chat queen responsible for yesterday. Yes, it's a chat queen that's responsible for that, but it's all good. But I really think my chat queen didn't do nothing. But I'm now starting to think, y'all know I drink all the time, but I haven't drank Ciroc in a while. This shit had me floored. Maybe it's because they got mad sugar in it and like it didn't feel like alcohol, and then I just like knocked out. Or not knocked out. I tried to take a 5-minute nap and woke up an hour later. I don't know. Anyway, let's get back to the tweets, y'all. Don't be entertained by my shenanigans. And if you see this clipped on Twitter and people say I'm weird, it's because I'm trying to entertain. It's all jokes. All right. Listen, they're back. I feel oily now. That's my thing. I'd be asking some weird questions. Yo, bro, after you oiled up for 2 hours and fuck Cassie, were you allowed to take a shower before you leave? Because to be that oily and have to get back in your clothes, I don't know. Whatever. They're back. It says, who did Mr. Holiday say he was calling for? Banner says Puff. What offer was he authorized to offer? Westmoreland says objection. They sustain it. Says, how do you feel during the call? He said, I declined the offer. Okay. Who's Holiday? Oh, okay. He said, I declined the offer. So somebody on Diddy's team called to try to offer her some bread, right? So I declined the offer, not responsive. It says, sustained. Move on unless you're prepared to ask some foundational questions like we discussed in the sidebar. The AUSA said, did you talk with him again? There's another sidebar. Sidebar. Judge says the objection are sustained. Move on. So they're kind of scolding the government. Move on with it, right? You can't elicit an answer or elicit, because what happens is if the witness says something or introduces something, now they could go down that route. What this usually tells me, because remember this is a government's witness, they kind of rehearse this. Like you meet with the government a bunch of times. We've heard some people meet with the government 27 times. They know you should know what they want to ask you, and you should know how they kind of want you to answer, that they could go in the right direction, right? The judge says the objections are sustained. Move on. Smizer said, your lawsuit, did you write it? Bongolan says, no. AUSA says, how much is being requested? Bongolan says, 10 million. AUSA says nothing further. The judge says, cross. Westmoreland says, yes, please. Says, I need to ask you some questions. You have immunity as long as you say whatever is true today, right? Bongolan says, yes. So who decides if you're lying? Bongolan says prosecutors. So now this immunity is not immunity. So there is blanket immunity, which means even after the trial, you could say, let's say you got immunity for a murder. Let's say you said after the trial, I did it. They can't charge you. They rarely give out those things unless it's really part of a complex cooperation agreement, because once you give out that agreement, you can't go back on it. what they normally give out is this use immunity or immunity for the testimony you say, okay? And that basically says if you say anything that's incriminating, they cannot use it against you, right? Now, there's some, ethical questions that arises from that, because let's say someone like Woody gets on the stand and he doesn't have full immunity, which means he can't, he still could get charged with the murder, but he has immunity from what he says on the stand. Let's say he says on the stand, I did the murder. And then he describes it in really good detail and says the body's going to be over there. Remember that murder weapon I can't find is over there, but I did it. It's not the person there. Yeah, he has immunity from what he says on the stand, but he could still be charged with the crime if they find evidence without him using his testimony. Say they get a independent call that says, hey, I think we know where the gun is. And then they find the gun and they connect it to him. Do they still charge him? It becomes an ethical question of, yeah, you can't use his statements against him, but his statements might give you or clue you in to the right path of investigating said crime, which could later lead back to arresting that same person. So usually prosecutions, they don't ever really put it on paper that we'll never prosecute you, but they'll just say, as an ethical portion, I think there was a case I went to the Supreme Court, they're not going to look to prosecute you, okay? Unless you perjure yourself, right? Cool. And in some places statewide, I do know that there are agreements that say it's kind of worded in a way where they're just promising you we're not going after you, all right? Anyway, but it's not full immunity. Okay. It says, who decides if you're, it says, yes, as long as she tells the truth. It says, who decides if you're lying? She says the prosecutors. Westmoreland says, Miss Bongolan, you're a graphic designer, right? She says, yes. She says, you and Cassie would work on designs, including at odd hours, right? She says, yes. You were focused on a t-shirt design around that time, right? She says, there was a lot of things. Westmoreland says, did she ever ask you to come over? Says, yes. Westmoreland then says, you suggested Cassie to do a photo shoot in the pool in just a t-shirt, right? Bongolan says, nah, that wasn't the first idea, but yeah. Westmoreland says, you began to feel comfortable with Cassie, didn't you? Bongolan says, yeah, how about? Westmoreland says, did you spend the night with Cassie? Yes. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to stop here and say, why does it sound like she's trying to almost say, you wanted to fuck Cassie because you a lesbian? I don't know. But they're kind of this is like a weird line of questioning. Like, well, you went to parties with Cassie, right? Bongolan says, not going to parties. We just partied. Westmoreland says, you did a lot of drugs with Cassie, didn't you? She says, yes. So how did marijuana make you feel? Why I feel like they're asking questions that they want her to say, made me feel horny or something. Like, am I thinking, or am I, the Pornhub shirt is like affecting my brain? I feel like these questions are almost trying to make it seem, well, all right, let's get to where they're trying to go. Pause. How did marijuana make you feel? Sometimes hungry. How did ecstasy make you feel? Uplifted. How about G? That's GHB, which, so like the negative parts of alcohol. So what about perk? I threw up. Cocoa Puff. What's that? That was a blunt with weed and cocaine. So you would agree with me that you and Cassie had a serious drug problem, right? Yeah. You sold drugs to Cassie a lot, right? Yeah. At one time, you got her like hundreds of dollars in pills, right? Or hundreds of pills, right? Yeah, they were hers. Name the drug dealers. I don't know if I can. Don't worry. Let's refresh your memory. In this job, when your clone line didn't work out due to the skater mentality of the diamond supply, it said, I believe they saw the vision, but whatever. So you believe that you were one of Cassie's best friend? Yeah. But you didn't meet Mr. Combs for over a year. And that was her man. She says, yeah. Was Diddy standoffish with you? Yeah. Did you talk with Deontay Nash after his testimony? Yeah. But not about his testimony, though, right? We know what's going on. Westmoreland says, you don't need to talk because you know, and then they would say, objection. They sustain it, okay? Westmoreland says, so you hired Tyrone Blackburn to sue Mr. Combs. Bongolan says, no, it was to seek justice. Your definition of justice is suing Mr. Combs. Bongolan says, could you rephrase that? Suing for money, is that your definition of justice? She says, yes. Wow, that's kind of, all right. In November 2023, you were aware Cassie filed a lawsuit. You were working together then, weren't you? Yes. AUSA says, may we have a sidebar? Judge says, you may. Westmoreland's on her ass, low key. Westmoreland's on her ass.
Versus Sean Combs, afternoon update, day 16. I want to quickly go back to testimony this morning from Frank Piazza, the video forensics expert. I forgot to mention this morning that towards the end of his direct testimony, he talked about analyzing video and audio.
I'm about to take a piss. I'm not falling asleep. Trust, I just gotta take a piss. I ain't taking a piss all day.
Extracted from one of the MacBooks that Cassie gave to the government. The username in particular, Frank Black. And he testified that one video specifically, he was trying to enhance the audio. Now, these are sealed exhibits, so we didn't see or hear anything, but I just felt like that was important to put out into the universe. Okay, so we finished up the direct examination of Briana Bongolan. That's how you say her name. She is Cassie's friend, graphic designer, and we got to the alleged balcony dangling incident from 2016, oh boy. And she testified that she and her ex-girlfriend were at Cassie's apartment. They were sleeping and they heard a banging on the door, and she described kind of pushing her ex-girlfriend into another room just to avoid any chaos. And then she went out, Briana went out onto the balcony, talks about, lighting up a cigarette or a joint or something. And then Diddy kind of came out of nowhere, and she described that he picked her up underneath her armpits and dangled her head first over the balcony. So her legs were kind of up in the air, and he kept saying over and over, you know what the F you did. And she testified she still, to this day, doesn't know what she did. And the government said, how long were you up there for? And she said, well, enough time. He said it, maybe 2 or 3 times. So however long that is. So maybe 15 seconds. And then he, took her back over and threw her against the patio furniture. And she talked about how Cassie came out of her room at one point and said in disbelief, did he just dangle you over the balcony? And so she describes just being very scared. She went to her house. She said she was shaking and she felt disgusting. So she showered, and then she called her manager or maybe her boss at work and kind of said, I don't know what to do. I'm in pain. Her neck hurt. She had bruising, and they said, go to the chiropractor. So I know I just moved my neck because I'm like, that actually sounds amazing right now. So sorry, not funny, but she went to the chiropractor, and the chiropractor apparently said to her, who did this to you? And she didn't answer. She, however, did get a neck brace from the chiropractor. We know this because we saw a picture of it. Her ex-girlfriend took a picture of the back of the neck brace and just some bandages that she had on her back. And additionally, Briana Bongolan took a picture of the bruise on the back of her leg, which was pretty bad, with what looked like a puncture hole in the middle of it. And when we saw it, some of the jurors, 2 or 3 of the jurors visibly reacted like because it did look like a pretty bad bruise. So she also talked about how Diddy FaceTimed her a few days later, and she kind of was like, look, I don't want any problems. And he didn't really say much. He just kind of was had his hands on his head, I guess. And she said that she and Diddy tried to be cool after that as best they could. Now, it also came up, when was the last time you hung out with Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura? And she said January 2nd, 2018. And she knew this date very quickly, right off the top of her head. And they said, why? And she said, well, I have a tattoo of that date on my body because that's when I decided to get sober. And they said, well, okay, what happened? So I guess it was New Year's Eve that year. And she testified that she, Cassie, and Diddy were in Miami, and they did K for about 8 hours straight at the one hotel. And she said after that, she was like, no thanks, no more. She wanted to get sober. And she actually kind of smiled a little bit talking about this because she said, she's been pretty much sober since 2018 with a smile. And something I noticed about her, and it was more during cross-examination, she would be asked a question and she would pause and she would just be like, yes. Or it seemed like she wasn't sure, or she was kind of, I don't know, pausing on purpose. But again, it was more so the cross-examination. But yeah, didn't show a lot of emotion. But I did notice a little bit of a smile right there with when she was talking about her being sober. She talked about hiring an attorney in January of 2024. And, she got a new attorney. I don't know I can't remember if I talked about this in the first video. I'm so sorry. I've done like a bunch of updates since then. But she got one attorney and he sent a demand letter and some of the information was incorrect, etc. So she ended up hiring a new attorney. And when they sent that demand letter, I think certain things were also a little bit incorrect, but she said, she didn't have a chance to review it, whatever. And she also testified that when Cassie's lawsuit dropped, or before that, Cassie actually called her and said, could I put your name in this? And she's like, no. And she testified that she talks to Cassie still. She talks to Deontay, and she's actually talked to them, during this trial, but not about anyone's testimony. And she also said that, yeah, her new lawsuit that was filed, the demand letter is for $10 million. Okay, so let's get to the cross that was done by Nicole Westmoreland. Nicole Westmoreland was definitely taking the aggressive move, I guess, or the aggressive tactics in cross-examination. She was very short with her. I kind of heard her like scoff a little bit. And at one point, similar to Mia, she just said, are you lying or are you telling the truth? And at the beginning, she actually said, she brought up her immunity. Like, what do you understand this to be? And Bongolan said, if I am telling the truth, nothing will happen to me. I am protected. But like, if I'm lying, then I'm not protected. And Westmoreland said, well, who gets to decide if you're lying? And Bongolan said, the prosecutors. And she's like, okay. And then she moved on. So again, she, talked a lot about her and Cassie's relationship and drugs. She hammered on the drugs for a really long time. It got to be a little bit tedious, the back and forth, because Bongolan was kind of like, yes, I did drugs, but I didn't do this drug in particular. I didn't do that much. And Westmoreland would be like, okay, I'm not asking you how much you did this drug. Did you do it? So it was a lot of that back and forth. And yes, she did drugs. She sold drugs to Cassie. She did drugs with Cassie and Sean Combs. And she also talked about, there was a little confusing part. She talked about a drug dealer, and Nicole Westmoreland said, do you remember any of their names? And she said, not really. And she said, was one of their names Ray J? And she's like, I don't remember. It sounds like the singer, but I don't think it's him. I mean, yeah, I don't think it's Ray J either, but that is what was said. She's like, it wasn't him, basically. And now they talked about, or Nicole brought up how the balcony dangling incident, she and Cassie discussed it previously. And this was around Cassie's lawsuit, because in Cassie's lawsuit, a lot of the information was incorrect. She had the wrong place. She said it was at a hotel. She had the wrong date. She said a friend named Tiffany was there. So Nicole Westmoreland, elicited testimony from Bongolan saying, yes, we discussed this because, we had to go over details type of thing. And then also it came up that, even her attorneys might have had a few things wrong, because they said that when Diddy picked her up, they made it seem kind of like a sexual assault, like he groped her. And Bongolan was like, I didn't say that. Yeah, then there was some back and forth about how in her lawsuit that her newest attorney wrote, or I believe, they had said when he dangled her over the balcony, he said, I could kill you, I could kill you. Now, she testified today that when he said, I'm the devil, I could kill you, that was in Malibu at his house. However, in her lawsuit, it was stated that he said this while dangling over the balcony, so they brought that up a bunch. And then the knife ordeal, that got a little testy, basically, because she's like, well, how did he get this knife? How did he get in the house? And she's like, I don't remember. And then Westmoreland's like, so he just like appeared with a knife out of nowhere and then threw it at Cassie? I mean, and then she said that she told the government that Cassie and Diddy had knife fights, plural. Bongolan said, no, it was just one. Yeah, so there was a lot of back and forth about, just meetings with the government, again, about what she said and what she didn't say. And she had said, the first meeting I didn't really say much because I thought it was a meet and greet, but I just had to talk to them and tell them everything. And Nicole Westmoreland kind of said well, it doesn't take much to tell the truth or something along those lines. She was just going down that path. But anyway, I'm sure I forgot something, but I will add it tomorrow if I didn't remember. And yeah, the cross will be going on tomorrow as well for probably 30 more minutes. And court starts late tomorrow, so I'm not sure what time I'll have an update, but stay tuned.
Oh wait, court starts late? What time does it start tomorrow? Fuck. Okay, so court might be starting tomorrow at 11 a.m. Why would they start late? They got to finish early. It's a Friday. No, tomorrow's not Friday. Oh my God, I'm dumb. Tomorrow's Thursday.
Wow. When you can get the state's witness to say, I don't remember what I told the government 2 days ago, you're having a field day on cross-examination. And Nicole Westmoreland, who was acting for the Diddy defense here in the Southern District of New York, was having a time of it in shredding the testimony of Briana Bongolan, a.k.a. Bono, one of the inner circle friends of Cassie Ventura this afternoon. I am Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Logic. I want to break down for you not just how badly it got for the state's witness when she was on cross-examination today, but I also want to speculate for you why things probably unfolded the way that they did. So let me break it down for you. This morning, Bono, whose name we have heard bandied about throughout this trial as being a friend of Cassie's from around 2015 through 2018, and a friend who they did drugs together a lot, and that it was increasing over time, that she had told over several incidents which were news to us. We had heard reference to the fact that there was a friend who was hung over the balcony. Cassie told us how her friend Bono was held over the balcony by Diddy. And Bono was coming in today to tell us that story. But in addition, she came up with two other incidents that were news to most of us. And specifically, one incident where she said she was sleeping and then Diddy came in, threw a knife at Cassie, and Cassie picked up the knife and threw it back at him. That was totally new. We also heard about another incident where she was standing at a photo shoot and Diddy came up and stood close to her in the face and said, I am the devil, I can kill you. Now, these were incidents that we knew nothing about. Cassie didn't testify about this. We didn't hear anyone else talking about those last two incidents. Cassie did testify about the balcony incident, and this is being held over the 17th floor of a balcony that she said her friend Bono had been held over it, and then Diddy threw her down hard onto some of the furniture that was there on the balcony. That is testimony we've heard about during the course of this trial. However, today we had Bono on the stand, and when she told over the story, and the way she described it is that she was on the balcony, and Diddy came up behind her, grabbed her from behind, and lifted her up. And it sounded like she described the incident as her feet were on the banister, on the railing of the banister, and then Diddy was yelling at her saying, you know what you did, you know what you did. And she's like, I don't know what I did. And to this day, she has no idea what it is that she did, and that she's facing outwards toward the view while he's holding her up there, trying to throw her over the balcony. That was the way it was told over on direct testimony this morning. On cross-examination, we started hearing all sorts of different claims as to how this story had been told over to the government and or in her civil complaint against Diddy. And she has filed a civil complaint against Diddy for $10 million that is still currently pending. That the way she tells the story over is somewhat different. Supposedly, sometimes when she was talking to the government, she said that Cassie was there. Sometimes she wasn't there. Cassie seemed to imply that she was not there at the time that this balcony part came in, that she only showed up after Bono had been thrown onto the furniture. And what was so brutal was that the way Nicole Westmoreland for the defense broke down the timeline of events. So she says that you were with Cassie in November and December of 2023 when Cassie was filing her lawsuit. She spoke to you before she filed it, she spoke to you after she filed it, and you had conversations with her, and she admitted that she had conversations with Cassie where the two of them had different perspectives as to what happened on the date in question. Whether it happened at a hotel or it happened at on the balcony of Cassie's apartment. That Cassie thought it happened at a hotel, and that she thought it happened, and she said it happened at Cassie's house. The date of the incident is something that they didn't agree about. The nature of who was there, whether another person named Tiffany Richards was there or not. Cassie had thought that she was there. Bonna said that she wasn't. Whether or not Cassie saw her while she was still on the balcony or only saw her afterwards. These are things that, depending on when this story is being told over, has taken on completely different perspectives. And obviously, when you have this completely shifting and amorphous storyline, what Westmoreland was trying to drive home is the two of you spent a lot of time just trying to figure out exactly how you're going to tell this story and then go out and sue Diddy for it. And it was a very effective cross-examination. A lot of the people in the jury room that I was in, it was not the actual courtroom, it's a viewing room, but a lot of people were snickering and shaking their heads as to the inconsistencies that we were saying, and there were more inconsistencies to come. The inconsistencies also came out later, that she had told the police that she was facing Diddy and that she distinctly remembered him charging toward her as opposed to him coming up behind her. These are completely different. That one time she said that she was smoking weed or marijuana, another time that she said she was smoking a cigarette, and a third time she said that she was pretending to be smoking marijuana. But the point that the Diddy defense wants to make, and has made fairly effectively, is that this story seems to have a completely different life. And at one point, that her lawyer claimed that the comment that Diddy allegedly made of "I am the devil, I can kill you" was made on the banister, not at a different incident of photo shoot. The point being that this entire balcony story seems to be something that, depending on the time and the date and who's telling it and when they're telling it, it seems to change exactly how things went down. And one of the last questions we had, and she's still in the middle of cross-examination. In fact, Westmoreland said that she has a lot more to go on cross-examination. But one of the last questions we had about this balcony incident so far was, and what drugs were you on at that time? I don't remember. And you spoke to the government about the balcony incident on numerous occasions, listing off the dates that she met with the government. She said yes. And did you talk about the balcony all the time? Yes. And did you talk with them about it 2 days ago? Yeah. And didn't you tell the government 2 days ago that you don't really recall the balcony incident that well? I don't remember. Wow. And the reason that this is so damning, potentially, is because she's now been effectively painted as someone who is creating and crafting stories with the most essential witness, arguably in this case, being Cassie Ventura, that the two of them are working in cahoots to try and formulate and get their stories together. And that's something that we should anticipate the defense is going to be pounding home. Some of the language that is used between the witnesses that seem to be a little bit unusual and mirror each other. And the tone of incredulity that Nicole Westmoreland for the defense was able to use effectively really helped paint and portray the image that many of us were feeling. That you're sitting here saying you didn't talk to them about this. You did talk to them, but not about this testimony. And it's like you start to wonder, really? Because so many issues with her story seem to be cropping up, and so many inconsistencies that seem to be arising depending on when she's telling the story or who she's telling the story over to, that it really creates a problem. So much so that you might think to yourself that the state might have been better if they did not put her on the stand at all. And I want to speculate for you why it is that she did take the stand, especially if you're the government and you see June 2nd, 2 days ago, you haven't put her up on the stand yet, that she doesn't seem to recall the primary incident that you are expecting to testify about, this whole hanging her over the balcony. So you have to ask yourself, why would the government put her up there on the stand? And my best speculation as to that is we have heard reference to it in the past. Cassie did talk about it somewhat, and more importantly, it came up they brought it up in opening statements. They brought up that Diddy is this monstrous individual who tried dangling a woman over the edge of a balcony from the 17th floor. So once you throw that out in the opening statement, you're kind of married to that position, and you want to lay out why it is that you made that claim in opening statement. Well, imagine if you're the state, and what you've done is now you've thrown this out in opening statement, and now when you're prepping this witness 2 days before, 3 weeks into the trial, 2 days before she's supposed to take the stand, and she makes a statement of, I don't really recall what happened with the balcony, you probably think to yourself, oh my God, we don't want to put her on the stand, but what can we do? We told the jury they're going to hear this story, and they didn't really get to hear much of it from Cassie, because Cassie said she came out after she was down off the balcony. So, and that she saw her thrown onto the furniture. So I think that's why this unfolded the way it did. I think the state married themselves to telling this story over all the way back in opening statements. And as the trial is going on, and when they're prepping witnesses a couple days before it's their turn to testify, they have no choice and they're locked into it, even when the witness comes out and says, I don't really recall the incident that well. That's what happened this afternoon. She's still in cross-examination. Should wrap up her cross-examination should wrap up tomorrow. We're expecting to hear from Jane. Jane is the story with the next sex trafficking incident that we've not heard anything about. It's a more recent trafficking allegation, meaning that the incidents range from, instead of being from 2007 to 2018, this trafficking supposedly happened between 2021 and 2024. We're supposed to hear from Jane. We thought we were going to hear from her today. We're supposed to hear from her starting tomorrow, we would expect, once this cross and redirect of Bana is concluded. And I'm going to be here breaking it down for you. If you like this type of thing, please like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell. Till next time, Godspeed.
That was good. That was good. Cool. So